Good morning, thank you for coming today. I'm Gonzalo Arcos, and I'm part of the development team of GeneXus. I work in the GeneXus server area, and today I'll be talking about sharing and discovery of knowledge in GeneXus. How to share and how to discover, how to find and explore different resources that will be useful when we need to develop so as to enhance the applications and make them more agile. How will sharing and discovery serve the purpose? It doesn't look quite nice, but it will allow us not to reinvent the wheel in many scenarios that happen as we develop our systems, when we need a special functionality and there are already components in software that we could use to achieve our goal. In many cases, we end up, for different reasons, by going from scratch instead of using what already exists. I think the cartoon is self-explanatory. If you pay attention, the person is transporting wheels, but his carriage is square, so he cannot move it. It's a little ridicule, but this is what happens to us when we are developing. When we look for a functionality, maybe that already exists. Maybe we have components and resources that would help us find that functionality, but we choose to reinvent it. And we make mistakes and we implement square wheels. So my message to you in this presentation is what to do to prevent getting to another square wheel and to really leverage on all the resources available when you develop your applications. Just to explain what I mean by discovery and sharing. Discovery means the action of looking for something that we need to discover. We need a component for the application. Probably we do not know if it exists, if somebody has created it, and we want to find it. And then sharing is what complements this. We want to make it available, share it with somebody else. So both concepts feed one another. The more and the better the sharing, the better the discovery. And the better the discovery tools we have, the more motivated we will be to share. Nobody wants to go into the burden of discovering if nobody else is going to use it afterwards. So my presentation is divided into three areas. First, I'll talk about today, the tools that we have today to do discovery and sharing. Then I will focus on the discovery scenario. We'll look at the overall cases, the stages involved, new functionalities we've been working with to make it easier and simple. Finally, I'll talk about sharing. In particular, I'll mention some future ideas and how to improve in this area. So, how do we share today? How do we discover components? We use GeneXus server, of course. In GeneXus server, any user can publish a KB and others can get that KB, open it, and look at the objects. As part of GeneXus server, we have many possibilities. We have the public servers like Sandbox, Open, and Samples. They have many KBs to start working with, and you can check and see if what you need is already there so that you don't waste your time. And of course, we have a private server possibility. For example, a business server, and there you will be able to publish KBs, objects, and share them. In this sense, today we have lots of data and knowledge bases and objects available so that when you start with a new project, a new application, you don't have to start from scratch. You can use several things that are already there. Now, in order to do this, we need this to be simple and easy to do this integration, to do this search. And this is when we come to the discovery stage. I will explain what it is and how we have improved. If I were to divide it into 3 stages, discovery includes one stage, which is the search. We need a functionality. We do not know if it exists already, or maybe we know that somebody created it, but we do not know where it is. So we need a way in which to conduct a search. We do our search, and the next step would be to inspect the outcomes. We may obtain some results, but we would like to see more details, to explore them in more depth, to see if that is what we really need. And finally, once we do the inspection and we verify that this is precisely what we need, we have to integrate. How can I integrate those results, that knowledge, in my new project in a very simple way? So far, in GeneXus server, we did all this, but not in the most practical way. We could look at the console, we could look at the KB and the content of objects, or we could create them through the server and do a local search. This had some limitations that were important. At all times of the search, we were working on one version and one particular KB, and many times we do not know what we look for is. So it's not practical to look KB by KB each at a time. Imagine a public server where you have hundreds of KBs. If you were to search one by one, that's time-consuming. Impossible. That's one limitation. The other limitation is that it's not practical to leave my development environment. I'm working in my project in my knowledge base, but then I have to go to the browser or get an ID or close the KB or go to the server. So we thought that we had to improve the search activity in terms of its power engine. So we thought that the best way of doing so was to integrate the search in the ID, not to leave the development environment, and precisely there look for any X server or any version we have access to. And this is the search dialog that you probably know. This belongs to GeneXus. In the past, we could look in the KB that you had open, but now we can also search in the servers. And the results are the same. These are GeneXus objects that you can see and you can explore. I'll show you later on how it works. This is in more detail. On the left of the dialog, we have the controls where we specify the search. And we indicate that we are looking in GeneXus server as a server, and that we have advanced filters. So in all GeneXus servers or search in all the KBs. This is the screen with the results. And here I would like to point out the name of the object, the type of object, in which server we can find it, the knowledge base in the server, the version, and if there's a matching in terms of contents, we can have the parts indicated, and we can open at any time this part. So the search will search inside the GeneXus KBs and the contents of the objects. That's the first stage of discovery. We did the search, we obtained the results, and we want to see if this is useful. In the former example, I looked for log, and I don't know what it has inside, so I need to inspect, to explore the content. And if we compare the way we did it in the past, it was a similar scenario. We had to create the KB, we had to close one thing, open another. It's not practical. So we thought that we needed a way to explore remote KBs without changing the context where we stand. One way of doing so is from the dialog of results to indicate that we want to explore that remote KB and explore that object. Another option to explore remote KBs is from the knowledge manager, if we know exactly what we want to watch. That will allow us to select the KB that we want to explore.
In any of the two cases, we are going to reach a dialog that is going to show us the structure and the hierarchy of the KB, as if it were the Explorer KB to which we are used. And here we are going to be able to see all of the objects of the KB, the hierarchy, how it's composed, the folders, the modules, and the name of the KB that we are exploring and the version as well. We will also be able to open each one of these objects in the IDE as if it were a local KB. In this case, I opened a transaction, and inside the editor, we are seeing the content. We can see each one of its parts, the properties, everything in a natural way, as when we are working directly with our knowledge base. And we can also copy parts of the object. It's the editor that allows us to do it, and as we see here, we will be able to do it as well. So with this, we have already seen how we will be able to explore the results. We do the search, we find objects, we are going to open them, we can explore the KB, we will see where they are located inside the KB, and let's assume that we found something that is useful and that we want to integrate in our project. We decide what it is, and what we used to do was to import from a local KB. It was not very practical, but now we've thought that since we have the possibility of exploring the KB remotely, we should also be able to create an export, produce an export, and bring the objects that we need. And in the dialogue I showed you about exploring, on the left we see the Explore KB, which is remote, and then on the right-hand side, a selection of objects. And we will be able to push or to take one object from one side to the other in a simple way once we have decided which are the objects that we want to integrate. So we have the option of doing an import directly. This is going to create an export on the side of the server, and it's going to create automatically the import dialog. So with this, we conclude the 3 stages. And it is clear that things have become more simple. Now let me try to do a demo. And here I have an MTKB, it's a new project, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch. I can start by bringing things in. And the logging in the applications is very important. So it is possible that I see that someone has done something I can use. So we are going to do a search. As we saw, that's the first stage. So we start with the search dialog. And as we saw, we can search in GeneXus server or in the local KB, and also we also have advanced filters. So we'll search in all the servers, the KBs, all the versions by log. And the server is local, so the results were quickly found. Here you see the results of the search, several objects. There are certain objects that belong to the login, and let's see that here I see a transaction, a module, attributes, procedures, and it looks like some of these can be useful, so we are going to explore these KB remotely. So I execute the command of locate in KB remotely, and in the IDE we have this command for exploring the local KB, and we have it here too. So we open the objects to see them. We open the transaction in order to see the structure. And here we see that it has different kinds of messages. And in the GeneXus editor, remotely, we are seeing the content of the object, the web form, the variables, etc. And then we can also see the contents of some props, the messages in the log transaction. So it looks like it can be useful. Even if I have to extend it afterwards, it saves me some work. So I want to bring it to my KB. I select the long module, and I have two options to mark it. One is to mark the object I have selected, and then the other option is to mark the whole module. So here I have selected the module, the transaction, and we are going to choose to integrate it in my KB doing the import. The server is contacted, I ask for an export, and the import is done automatically. So it did the import, and in the local explorer we can see that we already have the module with its transaction. So all this is local now, as well as all the objects that I have brought in. So I have already a way of starting with something very basic as logging in just a few minutes without having had to work from scratch. This will be available in GeneXus Stereo. The beta is open, and we also want to move it to GeneXus 15. So these are the three stages I showed you. And now I'm going to talk about sharing, which, as we saw at the beginning, is the other part of this whole mechanism, because we want to have as many contents available as possible. So what are our ideas for the future to continue working on this topic and also to make progresses? Firstly, to share objects directly from the IDE, saying I want to put together this module or this set of objects and create, for example, in a public server, a KB that is available so that I don't have to send the whole KB, and this will make a publication easier. Another thing that is important is to be able to make a difference or establish a difference when I do a search between results. The result would be the objects that I can find, and the other thing is the model on which I'm working. So we want to use in some way the marketplace, which already has several functionalities, comments, etc., to make these contents available. And finally, to improve collaboration tools, in the sense that it should be easier to make a development in open source. I may suggest changes to someone who is the author of a certain KB, suggest changes that can be reviewed and included in an easier way. So this is the last part of the process. So to go over it, we have a lot of data that are available that are public, or you have them in your company KBs. And a problem we used to have was that we didn't have a practical way of exploring and integrating contents from different KBs. And we see that we have some tools that are going to facilitate the process. And finally, we saw that sharing is also an improvement. So I invite you to download the beta and start using these functions. I think that they will be very useful for you, and I thank you for your attention.